Have you ever wondered why age is stored as integer and prices are stored as decimal? Everything is all about data type. So in today's video, we'll be talking about different type of data type that we have in SQL. So let's get into it. I've tried to put everything down in this note so that I'm not going to miss any details. So what is data type? Data type is an attribute of data which computer are able to interpret the data. So for example, now I'm a secretary in an office. So now I've been given the files and record of different departments. So if I just try to put everything together, just pick it randomly and put it together, put it on the shelf. If another person comes to that shelf, they are trying to locate a file of certain department, it will be difficult. You will not be able to interpret it, they will not be able to get the data. So that is the work of data type. When you put your data in a way that it is easy for an interpreter, it is easy for a computer to be able to decode different record in a column. For example, there's a difference between 5 plus 5 that is stored as integer and 5 plus 5 that is stored as text. One is going to give us 10, while one is going to give us 5. So there is something going on behind the scene, and everything is comes down to data type. So what are the type of data type that we have? We have 4 categories of data type. We have the integer, which is the numeric. We have the we have the character. We have the time, or we call it date, and we have the Boolean. So each of these category has its own, like, should I call it subcategory or different types under it. So let's start with numeric. Numeric has integer, we have big integer, we have decimal, and we have float. So what is the difference between these 4 numeric data type? The first one is integer. Integer is whole number, either positive or negative. If you have -10, it is integer. If you have +1000, it is integer, as far as it is whole number. So what is now the difference between integer and big integer? Integer, I said it earlier, anything integer is whole number, either positive or negative. But the difference between the two is integer is from -2.1 billion to +2.1 billion. Any whole number outside that cannot be stored as integer. Why big integer give us opportunity to quintillion. So we are trying to store data like age. It is okay to use integer. I don't think there is anybody that can live up to 2.1 billion years. So, but for example, we are trying to keep data of bank transaction. On a daily basis, some banks process about more than billions of transactions. So now if you're not trying to store the probably like transaction ID in a column, you are advisable to use something like this, right? So if you are trying to get your integer, your age, your transaction ID, or your student ID, you can use your integer. As far as it is not up to, it does not exist 2.1 billion or -2.5 billion. So that's what about integer and big integer. So we have float and decimal. So decimal and float, they are like brothers. Same way we have big integers and integers. But what is the difference between the two data? One works with approximation while one is fixed. The exact value passed to it is what is going to pass out. But the float, that's float. Float returns approximation error sometimes. For example, if you pass value, you set the record as float, now pass like 3.145. When you're trying to get that record, it might pass it as 3.15. So float give rooms for approximation. But for decimal pass back the exact value, the way you stored it inside the table. So when you are trying to enter in decimal, it goes this way. Decimal P, S. So what is P, what is S? P is the number of digits that is going to come before your decimal number, while S is the number of digits that is going to come after your decimal number. So for example, now if I'm trying to store like salary of an employee, and I can use decimal 12,2. So what I'm trying to do here is that the digit of the salary of that employee must not exceed 12, and the decimal after it cannot be more than 2. So for example now, an employee must be earning around probably like 90,000.20 kobo. So this is not up to 12, and this is exactly 2. So that's what decimal is talking about. Decimal pass back the exact value, why float goes with approximation. I think that's all. So we use decimal most times to store value of money. When you are dealing with money, you have kobo, you have cents. But when you are dealing with scientific calculation, you use float, like probably measurement of weight, of height, you use that. So that is that about numeric data type. So we have 4 types of numeric data type. You have the integer, you have the big integer, you have the decimal, and float. So those are 4 numeric data type. So the next one is character data type. So character data type is what we use to store our letters. So we have 3 types. Mostly we have most popular 2 types, which is CHAR. We call it CHAR, CHAR, and VARCHAR. Yes, VARCHAR. Sorry. So VARCHAR means variable character. Why this one means character? So what is the difference between the two? The difference between the two is that actually when you are working from your SQL, you might not really know the effect, but behind the scene there is something going on. For example, now if I set my column to char 10, so I mean the number of letters that I want to be passing to that column should be 10. Probably the first name of my employee should be 10. So for example, now let's now assume the first name of one of our employees is John, right? As you can see, it's not up to 10. So what character, which is char, is going to do behind the scenes that is going to create a space for the remaining letter. So behind the scene, what is going to happen is John dash 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 dash. It must be up to 10. It is a fixed character. When you set it to be 100, if you pass just 2 letters, it is going to take space of the remaining 98 letters. So that's what character is talking about. If it is 2, it must, if it is 2, probably you now pass the letter of 1, it is still going to create space for the remaining one. But in terms of variable character, we call it VARCHAR. That's why we call it variable. It varies. It is not fixed like character. So now, if I set my variable character to 10, and my first name of the employee is John, so what is going to happen is it's just going to take the space for John. Even if it is not up to 10, it is not going to take the external space for the remaining letters. That is that about variable character and character. So we now have another one that is not that common. We call it NVARCHAR. So it is like this, NVARCHAR. So it helps when you are trying to use Unicode. Probably you want your application to be multilingual, multi-languages. So it helps with that. So that's what variable character is all about. So the next category we are going to move on is our date. Under date, we have just 3, which is date, time, and date time. So date is when you want the exact, only the date. Probably you are trying to store the hire date of an employee, right? You want only the date, you don't need the time. You just want the date. That's what date is talking about. And if you want time, probably the when an employee sign in the morning, wants the time, so it's going to get only the time, ignoring the date. But if you probably want the date and time, probably like the login section of a user of an application, you want to get the login in the column, so you use date and time. You want to get the date and the time. So that's that about date category. So we now have the last one, which is Boolean. Boolean. So we use it to store value of true or false statements. It is it is used to be like bit. We call it bit. Before now, it is even when we the early stage of computer ages, it is called bits. So that's when we have 0 and 1. 0 is for the first statement, 1 is for the positive statement. So now we now have Boolean, which stored true or false, yes or no. So those are the data type that we have in SQL. The 4 categories is your numeric, your character, your date, your what's the last one? Your Boolean. While under it we have different categories. Under numeric we have integer, big integer, decimal and float. Under character we have character, variable character and n variable character. So under date we have date time, and under Boolean we have true or false statement. I'm very sure by now you should be able to differentiate between different type of data type, and you should know the one you should use when you should use them. If you find this video valuable, do well to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.